Hi guys, so welcome to history. Okay, so our first topic in history is called investigating the ancient past. If you're watching this video, you've obviously found the right place in your OneNote. Okay, so this is a folder we're going to be working in for the next, I think, 6 or 7 weeks. So what we're going to do for the first couple of lessons, we're going to do the glossary today, and then we're going to do a learning map. So hopefully nice ease into it. Okay, if there are any questions, ask on Zoom on the times that I've told you I will be online. It's just better than Edmodo. I'm hoping there won't be any questions. You can use Edmodo, but I just can't. I promise that I will get the notification straight away, so you might not get the answer straight away. But like I said, hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory. So you should have in your investigating ancient past, you should have worksheet number 1, glossary. Okay, you won't see all these other worksheets yet, so don't worry about that. So all we're going to be doing today, guys, is we're going to look at keywords related to history in general and a few related to the topic in particular. So all we're going to really be doing is complete the glossary, and then you're going to do a little bit of research at the end, nothing too taxing. So you're going to want to write down the definitions from the PowerPoint. I'm going to talk through them with you. Okay, so write them down here. Make sure you are writing them in your own words. Okay, don't copy and paste because you are not going to learn or remember anything if that's what you do. Okay, and yes, the image, you can use the image I've put on the PowerPoint, but by all means find another image that works for you. So let's get going. You can see I put the terms in here for you, so that should help you. Um, just focus on definitions. So obviously, the most important word, if we're starting off history, is the word history. Okay, so history is a study of the past. Okay, it focuses on people, on places, on events, and on ideas. Okay, so history is really the study of humans. This is the key thing to write down in your glossary. Okay, if you want, you can write this as well. So the word history comes from the Greek word historia, which means knowledge acquired by investigation. So that the literal meaning of history should give you an idea of how we actually do history. Okay, so one way we do history, or some people do, is through archaeology. Okay, an archaeologist, okay, is a type of historian who studies historic people and cultures by excavating, digging basically, at historical sites and analysing what they find. Okay, so they're like a hands-on historian. Okay, excavate, as we've just seen, that means basically to dig a hole in the ground, but it's a little bit more complex than that. Okay, because we want to do it in a way that doesn't destroy physical remains. Okay, from an archaeological site, a site of historical importance. Okay, and when you excavate, you find artifacts. Okay, so an artifact is an object that's made by a human being, especially one that is historically or culturally interesting. Okay, the artifacts is really what archaeologists are looking for. Even though in this photo they've excavated a human body, okay, normally it's artifacts that they are finding, okay, and they try and piece them back together because quite often they're broken, as you can see. And they will analyze these artifacts sometimes with the use of scientists. So you can date them using different scientific techniques to work out, for example, if it's a Roman vase or an Anglo-Saxon vase. Okay, and then they work with historians to work out what the artifact was used for and what it can tell us about the people who used it. Okay, so artifacts are an example of evidence. Okay, so that's information contained within a source, like an artifact, that may support an idea that a historian has, or a theory, or an argument. Okay, you should be used to using evidence in geography, okay, to back up your point. And it's very important in history as well, okay, because history is not just about dates and dead people, it's about understanding what life has been like in the past, and you need evidence to back up your theories on that. Okay, So evidence comes in two major forms. We can categorize these sources. Be careful of how you spell it. Sources, not sauce that you put on your dinner, okay? This primary source, again, is one category. This is something that's been created during the time period being investigated. So it could be diaries or letters written by people living at the time. It could be photographs if it's modern history. Ancient history, you tend to find pottery and coins. Okay, so primary source created at the time. Okay, so if we're investigating ancient Rome, primary source is going to be an ancient Roman coin. Secondary source is something that has been created after the time being investigated. So it might be a textbook, it might be a movie. Okay, so a movie about the Romans is a secondary source. These two categories, primary and secondary, they're not always crystal clear. For example, if I'm to write a book about the September 11th terrorist attacks, well, I was there, I was alive at the time, but I'm writing them 20 years after the event. So the fact that I'm writing them 20 years after will maybe have an impact on how I see them because I know some of the consequences of the event. But anyway, both types of source are useful, and as we'll see as you go through history in the upcoming years, they're useful in different ways, and they've got some problems as well that you need to be aware of. Okay, um, perspective. This is a very important thing when studying history, okay? History is not just about saying this event happened on this day. You do need to know that, but the more interesting part is the analysis and working out, well, what does that tell us about humans and about society? Okay, a perspective then is a point of view or a particular way of thinking about an issue. So historians often have different perspectives about what happened in the past and why it happened. So, for example, why did the Roman Empire collapse? Different historians will have different theories. It'll be based on evidence, but one historian may think a piece of evidence is more important than another. Okay. And related to that, you also need to be aware when you're studying history of your own perspectives that you bring. Okay, so where you live, the language you speak, your gender, that can all kind of influence how you see the past. Okay, that's not a bad thing, but it is something we all need to be aware of because people will see things in a different way based on who they are. Okay, something we'll be talking about this term is preservation and conservation. We actually touched upon that in geography when we we're talking about landscapes. It was also important in history, okay? So it's a process of protecting historical artifacts, of buildings, of objects, of historical landscapes, okay, that we deem historically significant. That should all be one word. I think it's not because of the size. There you go. Historically, it's basically things that are historically important. We want to preserve them in a way that future people can enjoy them, but also learn from them. So significance then is another important thing that we'll talk about in history. Okay, it's the importance of a person, of a site, or an event. So obviously we can't teach you everything that happened in history. That would be impossible. There's certain things that we picked out as being significant. Okay, and you maybe will argue that some things are more significant than others, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. Right, next few terms are linked specifically to what we're going to start with. Okay, so migration. So this is a geographical term, but it's also important in history. Okay, migration is the movement of people from one area to another. So in upcoming lessons, we will look at how human beings migrated in the prehistoric past. So right when human beings first appeared in Eastern and Southern Africa, they then very slowly over time, as you can see on this map, migrated around. Okay, and we'll look at the reasons for that and how it happened. Okay, humans then. What is a human? Well, Homo sapiens. Okay, you are a Homo sapien, as am I. Okay, that's a modern species of humans that appeared around about 200,000 years ago. So there were um, other humans actually around, Homo erectus, for example, that's basically linked to science here, the evolution of human beings. So, Homo sapiens. Okay, Stone Age. So history is divided into lots of different periods. The Stone Age is a very long period of time. It's from around, and I'll talk about what that word circa means shortly, for about 2.5 million years ago. So hopefully you've worked out that's before Homo sapiens, but some of our other ancestors were around, to about 3000 BCE, which is 5,000 years ago. And again, I'll explain why that is as we go forward. So, the Stone Age is a period when humans made weapons and tools out of stone or out of organic materials such as bone, wood, or horn. Um, as it covers a very large period of time, it's typically broken into three distinct periods. You don't need to necessarily know this, but by all means, if you're interested, you can have a look into those: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic period. Okay. And after the Stone Age, just so you're aware, there's a Bronze Age where weapons are made out of bronze and tools are made out of bronze. And then there's an Iron Age where weapons and tools are made out of iron. Within the Stone Age, there's a small period of time. I say small, it's about 20,000 years or so. Ice Age. Okay. That was a period during the Stone Age, towards the end of the Stone Age, when huge ice sheets covered much of northern Europe and North America. Between 35,000 and 12,000 years ago. It's important because it drives human migration and human evolution. Okay, the last few terms then are general historical terms. We will do a whole lesson on chronology. Okay, but basically chronology is arranging events and dates in the order in which they happen. So from the date that's furthest away to the most recent. Okay, so if you were to uh, do chronological history of your life, you would start with the oldest date being the day you were born, probably. Okay, so we often use timelines in history to lay out events and dates in chronological order, and that's really useful for historians to see how some events led on to others. Okay, BCE and CE. Now, this can be quite complicated when you start. Some people get it straight away, some people it takes longer. So we'll go over it again and again. Basically, it's two different time periods. BCE is before the Common Era, is before the year zero, basically. Okay, so it's working back from the year zero. Okay, it's sometimes BC. It's basically used by Western historians to indicate the years before the birth of Christ. And like I said, we'll do a whole lesson on this. So just be aware for now that that's what that means. And CE then is the year zero or one, sometimes it's said. And like, for example, we're now in the year 2021 CE. CE meaning Common Era. So BCE before the Common Era, CE after the Common Era. Okay. Um, so just need to be aware of those two. All right, and then the last few are pretty easy. Decade, so that's a period of 10 years. Century is a period of 100 years. Again, I'll talk about this more when we do the chronology lesson. Don't worry about that too much just yet. Millennium, importantly, is a period of 1,000 years, not a million years. Okay, mil means 1,000. Okay, and last but not least, circa. Okay, this is a Latin word for approximately. Okay, it's often written in front of a date as C dot. So you might write C dot 300 BCE. Okay, as a date. So that means circa approximately 300 years before the Common Era. Okay, it's used because sometimes it's unclear when a certain event happened, especially the further back in time we go, and there may be no clear start and end date to a time period. So, for example, you might see that Aboriginal people reached Australia C.66,000 BCE. That means that Aboriginal people reached Australia around approximately 66,000 BCE because we're just not sure because it was so long ago and because new evidence shows up all the time. So, guys, there you go. That is a glossary. Work through it, fill it in. If there's any questions, let me know. Like I say, these later ones, the BCE and the CE, will do a whole lesson. Once you've done that, just a little bit of fun, research date you were born, one significant person, and one significant event.